everybody. Simona here. Welcome to my channel. I'm glad you are here. So today is the promised consistency and mixing video, especially in the group I am, Dutch Pour and More on Facebook. I see that a lot of people have trouble with their consistency, and I had at the beginning too, very much, until I came across a video. It was Tammy Anderson who put it out, and she introduced me to the consistency gauge. This is a link I will put in my description box so you can print those out. So you see, you have your little round circles. That's where you drip your paint in. And then on the side, yeah, you can see that now, you have the numbers. So you hold it flat, you put your dollops of paint on, then you put it straight, you count for 5 seconds, flat again, and then you can see to which number on the side hits it when it runs down, and that tells you the consistency of your paint. As my paints might be different, my brands, my pouring mediums may be different, but if I tell you that my Dutch pour is between a 4 and a 5, and you do the same, and it hits between a 4 and a 5, you know that you have the right consistency. All right, that's second. First, let's mix some paints. I have here a phthalo green by Amsterdam I want to mix, and I have a pigment, a Bling It from Deco Art. No, that's not from Deco Art. That's Color Art, excuse me. And that is a Interference Blue. Interference pigments are really nice. All you see is white, but if you put them on dark backgrounds and they've dried, they give a beautiful color and a beautiful shimmer. All right, normally I don't really measure. I just dump it all in one of my squeeze bottles, mix it up and be done with it. But today is about you seeing how I mix it, and for you today, I will use the scale. All right, let's start with the first one. I put my cup on there and I tear it out. So my consistencies, my amounts of paint to Floetrol depends on the brand of paint. This is an Amsterdam. They're very well pigmented. I use 25 grams of this. If I would use a Deco Art, let's say 24K Gold, I would have to use a 40 gram of the paint to have a good mix. Not every paint is as good pigmented or as good binded as the other. Things like craft paints don't have the pigment density as an Amsterdam or a Golden has, so you have to use more. All right, here Amsterdam 25 gram paints. Let's measure it out. 25. $18, $20, almost there, a little dollop more, 24.8, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be super exact. All right, let's tear that again. Now I use 10 grams of gloss medium. This is a local brand. It's called La Española. It's nothing you would get in the States or in Canada or anywhere else. But you could use a Liquitex gloss medium, a golden gloss medium. It's a little bit of a gloopy mess, that, but it works well for me. So I add 10 grams to that. 10 grams. We are at 6, so a little bit more. I use that to reduce the amount of Floetrol a little bit because I have to import it, and it comes at a prime $50 by the time it's here. So using that reduces the amount of Floetrol a little bit, firstly. Secondly, I like to use pigments, and I use that to give them body, and what I add to the pigment I have to add to the tube paint, and I also add that to my base paint. I believe if you have all the same ingredients in your colors, in your pigments, in your bases, you shouldn't get issues, cracking, flocculating, or anything like that. So that's 10 gram. Let's mix that together before we add our Floetrol. Okay, that's enough. Tear that again. Now we add 70 grams of Floetrol. That's a normal American flat Floetrol. I just strained it. I always strain my Floetrol. There's a lot of clumps and stuff in there. So now I go to about 35. Okay, that's good enough. Then I mix it one more time and then I add the rest. Especially if you work with really heavy bodies like golden. If you don't mix it in bit by bit, you will have clumps to deal with, and that's not nice. Takes forever to stir them out. All right, so 35, now another 35, and we will be at 70, which is the amount that I add. 50, 60, 70.9, good enough, not a problem. All right, and let's mix that nice. I always try to scrape my sides, the bottom, and make sure that it's all mixed in really well. So that's the basic recipe, and then you have to thin it down to consistency with water. I can see it already, it is too thick. It kind of leaves a big mound on a mound before it sinks down. I hope you can see that. So I will leave it like that for the moment, and then we adjust it with our consistency gauge. All right, next one. Tear it again. Now this time we have a pigment. So a pigment is just a powder. It doesn't have the heaviness like a tube paint has. So in that case, I use 40 grams of my gloss gel. That is what's going to give the pigment the body. 38, 42. Okay, that's a bit much. That can just take it a little bit out. 40.9, good enough. Oh, 1 second, I have to grab a little spoon. Oh, I have one here. So now, remember pigments, they're dangerous. They're very, very fine ground powders, and they can go in your lung. And once they're in your lung doesn't know what to do with it. They stay there. That's dangerous. You should always, always wear a mask when you work with pigments. Right now I cannot, obviously, otherwise you can't hear me. So as you see, I tap the top a little bit to make sure that everything on the top falls down, and then I open that as far away from my face as I can, and nice and slow. There you go. So now this is 1/8 of a teaspoon. Get that at my supermarket, and I will come down a bit. There. So that's a well-loaded teaspoon. I hope you can see that. Now I add that into my gloss medium, and as you see, my face is going back. And dump that in there. Okay, so first of all, I close my pigments so I don't have a disaster. So now I grab my stick and I start mixing that. Again, as far from my face as I can, and at the beginning, really nice and slow. If you mix too fast, the cloud of the pigment is coming up and you will breathe it in. I don't want that. Once it's mixed in and there's no free powder anymore, and it's all blended in the gloss gel or whatever you mix it in, it's not harmful anymore. It's bound. It can't fly in your lungs anymore. So therefore, it's at the very beginning. You have to be really careful with that stuff. Okay. Again, scrape the sides, scrape the bottom, even scrape your stick to make sure that all the pigments well mixed. Okay, so now I can be a bit more relaxed. It's all mixed in. Nothing can harm me anymore. All right, now we will add 70 grams of our float roll to that. And again, 35 first, roughly. 20, 30, 39. Never mind, it doesn't matter. And now we mix that in. Pigments take a lot more time to disperse than tube paint. So with this one, it's mix, 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 mix for a long time. And then let it stand for 10 minutes and mix it again and let it stand again. And then they tend to thicken up because they have all that gloss gel in there. So before you use them, you check with your consistency gauge again and have to add water if it has thickened up a bit. Okay, now let's complete the 70. $60, 9, 68, 71.7. It doesn't matter, it's good enough. Nothing has to be super exact. So as you see, this still looks as white. It needs to go over a dark color or over a dark background to shine, and it needs to dry. Before it isn't dry, you don't really see the beauty of it, and they're very beautiful. So I don't think, just when the sun hits it just the right way, you see a little bit of the blue. So here you have the consistency again. See, that is already thinner because it's a pigment than our green here. That is already quite a bit thicker. You see the big puddle it makes, a little mound it makes. Normally it should just leave a slight trace, and that's a really big trace. I hope you can see that. So they will need to be thinned down. Okay. So let's put those two things at a side and just keep the water here because that's what we'll need right now. Okay. So now here comes our consistency gauge. We'll just put a little dollop on just so that it fills the circle, and try to make your dollops even. Otherwise, when one is really big and the other is really small, they're not going to be a good measure for you. So try to just make them the same. So, okay. Now, turn that around and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we see here, in conclusion, that our pigment is thinner than our tube paint. Our pigment reaches 3, our tube paint only 1.5. We need to be between 4 and 5. Okay, so, because I want to use that again, I'm just going to wipe that off, and then I can use it again. So, that means now we have to add a little bit of water and a goodly bit of water. A little bit to the pigment and a goodly bit to the tube paint. Okay, let's take our scale out again. Put it on. Okay, that's tared already. So now, the water you really have to add bit by bit and slowly. So let's add that's 0.5 of a gram of water. Mix it up. So now we go ahead and check that real quick. Just that it fills out its little circle. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now it's not at a 2 anymore, now it's at a 3 and a bit. It's still not thin enough for our Dutch pour. So that means we'll add another 1/2 gram or so of water. And this way you can just get yourself where you need to be, bit by bit. You don't have to be worried about your consistency anymore. With that, you will know exactly where you need to be, and if you're there yet. Okay, tear. Okay. So another 1/2 gram. For me, this tool, this gauge was a revelation, because it's so hard, you know. You can get in America, you can get so many more things that it's really difficult for me to get here. And you just buy ready pour paint. If I buy ready pour paint here, they're so expensive because the transport is exceedingly expensive. So this is a great help for me, and I hope it will be a great help for you as well. One more time. Up. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see where it is. How can I show that better? Let's use that spatula. Now we are at 3.5, which tells me we need a little bit more water. It needs to be minimum 4, if not 4.5. But again, better bit by bit than once too much. Tear yourself. There you go. That's another 1/2 gram, and I think we should be there now. Same goes, little dollop. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, paper's starting to curl. What? I don't believe that anymore. Once your paper gets too wet, it starts to curl up, and then it doesn't run so free anymore. So I'll just go 1 over. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. Now we have it. See that? At a 4.5. I hope you can see that. I just did that so you can see where the number is, but that's the finish of it. And that's, well, it was at a 4.5. It has run down a little bit more because I held it up. That's perfect. That means this is done, and it can go in my squeeze bottle. Done with that. Okay, so now we have this phthalo green. This will take a lot more water. Okay, on our scale again, and I will start with 1 gram of water with this. Yeah, 1 gram. And mixy, mixy, mixy. And I can already tell by looking at it that is still too thick. So we'll add 1 more gram to it. There. It builds too big of a mound. It would be more like for a ring pour, the consistency. That's another gram. So that makes 3 grams. That looks better. So let's, I don't think it's there yet, but let's give it a try nonetheless. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, we are at, hang on, let's check that out like this, it's easier. We are just under 4, so not quite there. That means I'll add another 1/2 gram of water. There. There you go. Mix that. It's getting better. But I already think I will need 1 gram. So I need another 1/2 gram. And I think that should be, hopefully, it. And I don't say this is the only consistency, the only way, or the best way. No, it's just my way and it works for me. Okay, one more time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, where are we? We are at 4 3/4. Perfect. Perfect. Everywhere for me, between 4 and 5 works for a Dutch pour. So now you can use that gauge for all kinds of techniques. Like, let's say you want to do a ring pour or a straight pour, a puddle pour, or any of those things. I think it's somewhere between 2.5 and 3. So this would be 1. So 1.5, 2, that would be bloom paints. Shall I add bloom? 2.5, 3, that would be straight pour, ring pour, puddle pour, all those things. And between 4 and 5 is the Dutch pour. And I know that the pearl cell technique is even thinner, but I've never done that, so I can't give any information on that. All right, so this was the mixing of our paints. I really truly